Hi guys, it's a favorite teacher, Kaumaji Maza, and welcome to Learning Science the Easy Way. So for those that are watching me for the first time, on this platform, I did sciences, physics, and chemistry. So I encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you'll be able to receive a notification whenever a new video is posted. So basically in this lesson, I'm going to talk about the center of mass of an object and as well as the stability of an object. So center of mass is a point through which the mass of an object or the mass of a substance appears to act on. And it is at that same point where an object stays in a balanced state. So when you look at different objects, each and every object has got its own center of mass, regardless of the shape, regardless of the size. Each and every object has got its own center of mass. So for a body that is already balanced, or which is already in equilibrium, it can only lose its balance if at all there is a resultant moment. So let's try to look at some of the cases of equilibrium. So one of them is stable equilibrium. Then we have unstable. Then there is also the neutral equilibrium. Okay, so now let's try to look at stable equilibrium. So we are saying a body is in stable equilibrium when it is slightly tilted but still returns to its original position without toppling. So here we are saying a body is in stable equilibrium when it is slightly tilted but still returns to its original So a body that is in stable equilibrium has a wider base and a low center. Of mass. So it is supposed to have a wider base and as well as a low center of mass. So now let's try to look at this scenario. So we have this object which is in stable equilibrium with the wide base and the low center of mass, which is somewhere about here. Acting downwards, we put it as W1. So this is the point where the mass of this object is acting from. So now, in a situation where this object is tilted a bit, so you will notice something of this nature. So it will be tilting about its pivot. So this will be the pivot. And at the same time, the center of mass is raised a bit. So in this case, we have our center of mass there. So which is acting downwards. So now, gravity is pulling down around this mass. So if you let the object go, or if you let it like that, you find that it will be pulled back to its original position by gravity. So since gravity is acting around this point, it pulls the object back to its original position. So a situation of that nature is what we are calling as the stable equilibrium, where an object is tilted but still returns to its original position. So this is what we refer to as stable equilibrium. So stable equilibrium consists of having a wider base and as well as a low center of mass. So let's try to look at another case, which is the unstable equilibrium. So for the unstable equilibrium, we're saying when an object is tilted or slightly tilted, it topples over. Meaning for this one, the object does not come to its original position, but it topples over. Okay, so now let's try to look at these two scenarios. So we have this object here. So basically when you look at this object, you'll be able to tell that it has got a narrow base. At the same time, it has a raised center of mass. So the center of mass for this object is somewhere here. So basically this is where the weight of the object is acting from, or the mass of the object is acting from. So now what would happen if this object was tilted a bit? So when you tilt this object, its force will be acting through the pivot, which we have, which is at that point. Then the center of mass for this object is going to be raised. It's going to be raised somewhere there. It's going to be raised, so it will be acting downwards. I put it W2. So this simply means that the center of mass creates a turning effect over the pivot. And since gravity continues to act on the center of mass downwards, this object will top over. So the toppling over of this object is due to the turning effect that has been created by the center of mass over the pivot, and at the same time is due to the gravity which is pulling the center of mass downwards. So that causes the object to top over, and such an object which topples over when it is slightly tilted, we say it is in unstable equilibrium. Let's try to look at this other case of equilibrium, which we are calling as the neutral equilibrium. So the neutral equilibrium is slightly different from these other two that we have talked about, where the stable as well as the unstable equilibrium. This one is just neutral. So for the neutral equilibrium, when the body is slightly tilted or it is slightly rolled, it still remains, or it stays in its new position. So for this case, we are saying it stays in new position when tilted or rolled. So what this means is that for a body that is in neutral equilibrium, the center of mass is neither rises nor falls. So it is just neutral. So there is no change in the center of mass. So we're saying the center of mass is neither rises nor falls. For example, if you look at this object here, which is a ball with its center of mass there acting downwards. So if you roll the ball, you'll find that it is going to maintain its center of mass, which will be acting downwards there, but it will still maintain the new position, to stay in its new position. So when you roll the ball over to that other point, the center of mass will still remain the same. It is not going to rise or fall. it will still remain at the same position, and at the same time it is going to maintain a new position where it is going to stop from. So these are the three cases that involves equilibrium when you are talking about the stability of a substance. So a substance can either be in a stable equilibrium, or it can either be in the unstable equilibrium, or it can be in a neutral equilibrium. I hope you followed through. Thank you very much for watching.